Hi, this is Dr. Frank Chopatini with the Church of Rational Truth. Today, we're going to do a brief lecture on ending enabling toxic relationships, doing charity. Um, Basically, the way I want to start this is with an example of a homeless person on the street and what you should or should not do about that. Many people will come up with this and say, "Oh, well, I'll give them money. If they're asking for money, I'll give them food, but I won't give them money." What is the moral or the just thing to do in this situation? For me, I would usually say that the thing to do is probably nothing. It doesn't feel good. It doesn't sound good. You're not going to win awards from it. But in most cases, the best thing to do probably is to not give that person anything. The reason I've come to that conclusion for the vast majority of these cases is because you're only enabling this person to live this kind of lifestyle, to remain homeless. You're not fixing the base cause of the problem. Yes, you might have given that person money that might have reduced their suffering for a short amount of time. Yeah, you could have given them something to eat if they are hungry. But the problem is, immediately after, they're still homeless. They are still in the same situation. You're only enabling them to continue that. They are not better off. They're not using that money to better themselves in most cases. But, I want to say, like always, grain of salt. Things are very situationally dependent. And this is obviously not far reaching, is not going to work for every single case and every single person who is homeless. Uh, but this is an example of kind of tough love and not allowing people to enable. I have this problem a lot of times with patients who come in to talk about issues, usually with family members, sometimes with friends, where they're doing things that are trying to help them. They're loaning them money, they're doing work for them, or with family members, they're letting them stay in their house, they're getting them food, they're giving them loans. Uh, and it happens a lot of times where people are giving and giving and giving, but the person who is having the problem or the person who is in need is only being enabled by this. They're only just taking from that person. They're not working on themselves. They're not facing the consequences. And this is a big problem because even though you're thinking you're helping this person, the person really doesn't change at all. They still end up in the same bad situation, or they haven't done anything in terms of improving themselves in the long term. This is why, in most of these cases, it's probably best to do tough love, basically to allow a person to get the natural consequences for their actions. And I talk about this a lot with patients. I usually tell them, "Hey, what are the natural consequences of these actions that this other person is doing? And most importantly, are you preventing this person from seeing the natural consequences of their actions? If so, that's something you don't necessarily want to do. If someone has some sort of activity, like let's say they're gambling and losing all their money, you loaning them money is only preventing them from seeing the natural consequences. And yes, it is sad when someone has consequences, but if they are natural, if they are the foreseeable outcomes from that activity, and now you're removing those things, you are just removing the negative reinforcement. You are removing the reason to no longer do those bad activities. So you're not, in most cases, helping that person overcome those problems. You're only giving them more of a reason to continue doing those. If anything, you're reinforcing those problems because now I don't have a negative. It happens a ton of times with family members who are alcoholics or on drugs. One of the problems, if I spend all my money on drugs and I don't have money for rent, I'm going to get kicked out of my apartment. If you pay for my apartment, I don't have that negative. I don't have that bad side to doing drugs or my alcoholism. If you're giving me food, if you're giving me shelter, if you're removing all those natural consequences from my actions, I don't have any negative anymore. If I don't have a negative anymore from my actions, that only means that I'm more likely to continue with those decisions because why would I stop? If I get this thing that gives me pleasure and I don't really get as much of a negative, then I'm going to keep doing it, or I might even end up doing it even more than I normally would have without those consequences or with those consequences in place. Uh, this is difficult because most people feel badly. Most people feel senses of guilt, and a lot of times these actions that are charitable or feel charitable help dissuade that guilt. You have a nice house, you have a stable life, you have money, you have food, you have comfort. Many people feel guilty about that. They have done these things and they have, and then they see other people who do not have, and that brings a sense of guilt. Why should I have these things? Do I deserve these things? Or maybe they've done some things in their past that they're not so happy about and they feel bad about them. So they want to feel better. They want to get rid of their things or give their things to try to help another person and therefore assuage that guilt, get rid of that guilt. The problem is most of the times that guilt isn't really related to that other person. That guilt isn't necessarily always deserved. And doing that action doesn't really, in many cases, end up being very charitable. Usually there isn't much net good that's done in those cases, even though they look good on the facade. So one big case is that I come over and over again with charity. Real charity doesn't really always feel good. A lot of times, if you're doing charity that feels good, a lot of it is more for your own self of improvement or your own self enjoyment. Really, with it, you want to do more in terms of what actually is fixing the base problem. You have to look at the actual situation that is leading to this negative and then go, what are the sets of circumstances that are leading to it? And what can you do to actually fix the base problem? If you don't fix the base problem, not only are you not going to fix this particular case of what's going on, the bigger societal problem is going to continue going on. It's not fixed. You're just putting a Band-Aid over it, and it's going to continue going and going, and it's just going to chew up resources while nothing else is improved. I think that's going to be it for this lecture. We'll keep it kind of brief for this one. Next week is Halloween, so I think we're going to skip that week and not do a lecture, but then we'll probably do another one the week after that. If you guys want to see anything in terms of lectures, please let me know. But once again, this is Dr. Frank Ciopatini with the Church of Rational Truth. You all have a good week and a happy Halloween. Bye-bye. Please don't come in